Hi guys, hope you are well. So I wanted to do a very quick video for you. So if you are thinking about getting into service accommodation, then there are a few things that you have to know and understand before you dive in first. So here's my 4 top tips for you if you want to get into service accommodation. So have a think about this. If you're planning to start any business, for example, let's say you wanted to sell printers or you wanted to sell computers, there are a number of things you've got to do before you actually sell the product. So you've got to know your numbers. You've got to know how much it costs you to develop, manufacture, buy, ship, get an understanding about logistics. Do all your figures, quantify all your figures before you start the business. And that's exactly what you've got to do with service accommodation. Because if you overshoot on your numbers, if you overextend on your numbers, if you overreach on your numbers, the entire thing falls. So before you start your serviced accommodation, spend time on getting your numbers as accurate as possible. Once you've done your numbers, then you've got to double down on those numbers. In fact, what we are looking for is the worst case scenario. What's going to tend to happen as you're planning to get into service accommodation is you're going to do your numbers and your mind is going to tell you that you are planning to make £1,000 per month and you're going to look for evidence to back that up. What we want to do is go against that. We are looking for almost evidence to suggest that this deal or this specific property is not going to work. So if it then does work, then we at least know that we have a deal on our hands because we've analysed it based on worst case scenarios. So number one, make sure your numbers are sturdy, make sure they are tight, because as I said, if one number is out of place, then the entire figure, then the entire structure becomes loose. So number 2 is understand that there are seasons to serviced accommodation. That's really crucial. There's a lot of misinformation out there that you get into service accommodation, you do your numbers, and then your numbers are going to stay the same across the entire year. That's not the truth. Like many businesses, there are seasons. Just with service accommodation, there are seasons, and you've got to know when your seasons are. And if you are operating in the UK, then there are some typical seasons. And if you're operating in certain geographical areas, there are further seasons to consider. So again, when you're doing your numbers, make sure you are analysing things based on the entire year so you get the average, but at the same time based on the seasons. What's going to happen in September till December? What's going to happen in December till March? What's going to happen from March up until summertime? These are the things you've got to take into consideration if you want to make it in serviced accommodation. Number 3, you've got to make sure you're able to analyse accurately how many of the 5 serviced accommodation users operate in your area. How many of them occupy your area? So number 1, corporates. Number 2, tourists. Number 3, groups. Number 4, leisure. Number 5, pleasure. Pleasure are people who do business and then spend some time doing leisure. So you've got to say, if I plan to operate in this location, how many of those 5 fall into my area? So if you're in London, for example, then you can say, yes, you can attract tourists. Yes, you can attract corporates. Yes, if you've got a large enough apartment, you can attract groups. Will you attract leisure, which are business and leisure? Yes, you can, which makes your case study or your feasibility study a bit more tighter. But if you're going into another area, you've got to ask yourself the same question. How many of those 5 fall into my occupancy? Because think about this. Service accommodation is not just for tourists. It's not just for people who are coming into the UK for holiday. It's those 5 different types of people. So the more of them that we can fit into our case study, the better it is, and the more likely we are to make money from this business. And then number 4, make sure you are analysing your competitors. So what we do is we call them credible competitors. You are looking for people who are already operating in the same building, in the same area, in the same location, and you are able to see what they are currently doing and how they are performing. And if they are doing well, it at least means you stand a chance of doing well. A lot of people say, hey, well, my nearest competitor is 10 miles away. Then what do you use to analyze whether your business is going to do well? So make sure you are analysing your competitor, seeing what they're doing, and then creating your model around what is working. I wish you all the best. I'll catch you soon.